And we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I would take approval of the regular agenda that's presented, unless if somebody has any additions, corrections.
So moved.
Rick made a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
And Maggie seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The consent agenda, does anybody have any questions on those? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Maggie made the motion, Bruce seconded it. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Do we have a city engineer update? Oh, is he? Okay. All right, Chris, you're up. But we can't hear you. Nope. Still can't hear you. Can you hear us, Chris? Yep.
Still nothing?
Nope, no, we got something. Try it, test.
Okay, I switched to my ear sets. Okay, let me know if you can hear me okay now. It shows that it's working on my end.
Yes, we can. I can.
Okay, good. All right, kind of hear me. I'll try to get through this. The project update in front of you, mostly the same as previous ones. I'm going to highlight one thing on here, which is the 2024 Street and Utility Improvements Project. There was a variance request at the last council meeting, and that was to keep the street width on First Street at its current width. That was submitted to MnDOT, and they did not. They were not in favor of that variance request and will not be bringing it to the variance committee. So the district's 7 state and 8 engineer reviewed it and was not in support of that. So we are going to look at maintaining the existing street width, but not using state aid and likely reallocating the mileage on that one block of First Street to another street next year. So it does kind of shift some of your funding around for the 2024 project. But you're not losing funding. It's just that you'll have to use your local funding to cover First Street Southeast instead of using state aid. And then that state aid funding would remain available for future projects, including the 2025 project coming up ahead and 10th Avenue Southeast and such. So are there any questions for me on that? Otherwise, I'll move on to the next item regarding the Columbus Avenue project.
So that means we would borrow more money then, or bond, or add that to the bonding of that for the project?
That would be correct. Yeah, there was $350,000 from state aid that was in the feasibility report to fund First Street Southeast. So yes, you will need to use funding from a different source, which would be your local funding, your bond, to pay for First Street Southeast.
And just remind me, if you could remind me again, what was the reason that we wanted to keep it narrow, and is it worth $350,000, I guess?
Yeah, so the current width on that block is 30.5 feet. The minimum requirement is 34 feet for state aid. The reasoning for trying to keep it narrower is that it's more of a residential block compared to everything to the east, and trying to keep it narrower to kind of deter truck traffic being one of the things from going down there, and then also just kind of reduce the impact on that block because they are also going to be getting sidewalk. So sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk combined with 3.5 feet of widening would be a little bit more abrupt of a change for those residents on that street. So those the two reasons, basically trying to deter trucks, and then the second being to not widen the street more than it needs to be. So the only way around that would be to restrict parking on one side of the road, which was not something we wanted to discuss, wanted to entertain. So you could go with a narrow road and remove parking on one side of the street, but that's not something that we want to do.
I'm not opposed to it necessarily, but it's just, we're taking the opposite position of MnDOT then. They would prefer it to stay wider, and we're gonna keep it narrower. Is that correct?
Same.
Or keep it the same?
The same, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's MnDOT requires you to accommodate truck traffic on all your state aid routes, and this block is between 7th and Lexington is on your state aid system. It doesn't get the traffic that other state aid routes get in town. It is largely just to capitalize on mileage that you have in town, so that you get the maximum amount of state aid funding on a yearly basis. So that's the reason why that's on the state aid system, but it doesn't necessarily match most other state aid streets that you have in town. It is definitely a narrower road than would typically be on the state aid system. And once you do an improvement, you do have to bring it up to modern requirements. And design width is considered a kind of one of the basic design elements that I was told they don't want to allow anything smaller than what's in there. It used to be 36 feet would have been the minimum. And then more recently, they started to allow narrower drive lanes, which is where the 34-foot roads are now the minimum. So,
and I know, as Chris had mentioned, that being more residential in nature, widening the street would encourage the truck traffic, which is why they want the wider streets. And so we would be looking at finding somewhere in town where the truck traffic already is accommodated and just moving that allotment over. So that way we'd still get the funding. It would just be attached to a different street section than this more residential section.
Yeah, I was just wondering to myself if there's much deliveries there for the back of the mall there. That's what we're talking about, the mall area.
No.
And I don't know.
Well, yeah, for truck traffic, but it would be west of that in those townhomes.
Oh, the townhomes, yeah, I don't have any issue with that.
Well, I'm a little, Chris, I'm really unaware of people parking on both sides of the street. I don't understand why if we restricted one side of the parking, that would somehow affect, I mean, can any of you think of anybody that you've seen parking on both sides of the street behind the mall?
No, it's not that one. It's a street, yeah,
By which one?
This is between 7th Avenue and Lexington,
just to the west of there.
just east of the funeral home.
Oh,
That's where the
oh, oh.
townhomes and houses are.
Perfect,
So
okay.
east
I was
of
on the
that
next street up,
would
I'm
still
sorry.
stay as state aid, and that's a wider street like it should be.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
so that's where we're at. That if there aren't any more questions on that, I can move on to my next item on the agenda, which is on the Columbus Avenue project.
Yep.
So what I have in front of you today is change order number 2 for the 2022 street utility project, Columbus Avenue. So this project has been primarily complete since September of last year. The work they had after that point was seeding the project and a couple sanitary sewer repairs that were completed this last summer. The contractor has seeded the site on multiple occasions, but has failed to maintain the seeding on these areas. So with the work that's been done, the contractor's been paid for half of the application that they put down. So they've applied 4,640 square yards, and they've been paid for half of that to date. At $2 a square yard, that means $4,640 is currently being held on payment to complete the turf establishment. The contractor has a seeding subcontractor, which has been unfortunately not performing on this project. It is their responsibility, the general contractor's responsibility to get the seed to grow, but we're at a point now in December, over a year after the seeding was put down, and we're probably about 90 to 95% complete out there, but there are a few yards that do need some more work. So what we did do is discuss with the contractor the option of completing this change order to not pay them the remaining $4,640, and that would allow the city to get these yards finished on your own, and to that would not be the full $4,640. We don't know what that cost would be, but it's expected to be less than $1,000. The second item I mentioned, there were sanitary sewer repairs completed on Columbus Avenue, and the contractor is responsible for those costs, including construction engineering on the part of SEH. So what we had discussed was not going through the process of charging those engineering costs in exchange for not paying them the remaining $4,640 on turf establishment. The costs seem to be very close in value, and this would allow us to close out the project. So this is not a change order that would cost you money. It's just more to document this discussion we had with the contractor so that they don't come back for more seeding money later on, and then we won't go after them for trying to get additional engineering costs. So seemed like an amicable way to close out this project and allow us to kind of be done with this and find an alternate route to get these yards seeded as part of either the 24 project or the 23 project, one of the two. So we're more looking out for the residents to get things seeded, and we're not getting the performance out of the contractor. So this allows us to kind of pivot and find a way around that.
Okay. Sounds good. So you
So
need.
all it's asking for today is there's not necessarily a motion or anything like that, but we're recommending approval of change order. You could do it by motion, I guess, but this would be just to recommend approval of the change order. Number two, this would formally go into the next pay application, which is just going to be release of retainage, and that would be going to our next council meeting in December. So 2 weeks from today, we'd approve the final pay application. And you can either approve this change order right now, or I guess you could approve it with the pay application later. We just want to make sure the council's okay with this direction.
Okay. I think paying it with the next meeting would be just fine with the pay app, or what did you call that? Pay application?
There'll be there's one pay application left, which
Okay.
is just going to be the last 1% of the contract that's being held, and we could process it with that time. All the same. Yeah, we can process it later. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Then we'll do that.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Chris?
That's it for me.
Okay. Does the council have any questions of the engineer?
Not me.
Anybody else? Otherwise, thank you.
All right. Happy
Thanks,
night, everyone.
Chris.
Good night.
Yep, bye.
Okay, the next item is the public's invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. So if somebody wants to speak, you need to come up to the speaker podium and state your name and address. And you have 5 minutes to speak to the council for whatever you want to, other than what's on the agenda. Does anybody want to speak? Seeing none, there's nobody online? Okay. So with that, we'll move on to item 7, which is the public hearing for the truth in taxation. So you're gonna take that before I open the public hearing?
Yeah, I can do that. All right, so this is our truth and taxation meeting as required by state statute. We've been, as many of you know, we've been discussing our budget since August. This year, though, back in September, the city council approved a preliminary levy of $5,114,295, and city staff submitted that paperwork to Scott County. In November 2023, residents of New Prague, both on the Scott and LeSueur County sides, received a preliminary tax statement stating a proposed levy of $3,930,768. The change seems to stem from a miscommunication between staff's understanding of a form submitted to the county and ultimately Scott County's meaning of that form. So at the moment, city staff is working with Kennedy and Graven, who represents us as council, as well as the Department of Revenue on a solution. As an update, as you know, we had the meeting last week. I did put a couple different documents in front of you. You had asked to see the resolution, both the approved and the revised one, and I included those for you. I also included the memo kind of updating what we had talked about, namely kind of some various funding options in there, and the scenarios laid out as to what payback would be if we end up going that route and are unable to levy what's intended. And finally, I also included statute language from Minnesota Statutes 275.07, basically referring to language about if cities fail to certify a levy, that the levy shall be the amount levied in the preceding year. So just information for you all. I figure after the Truth and Taxation meeting, we can discuss a little bit further, as I do have some updates from Kennedy and Graven to share with you. But we can get through the Truth and Taxation first so that people can ask questions. So just for some information for those watching, as I mentioned, our intended preliminary levy was at a little over 5.1 million, and the recorded levy amount, which people saw in their tax statements, was 3.9 million. At our intended amount, we would have had a property tax rate of 44.5%, though it is now showing at 34.81%. And instead of a $289,000 increase, as we intended with the preliminary, we are showing an almost $900,000 decrease. Coming into it, we had worked and lowered the levy down about $60,000 to a little over $5 million, which would have brought us closer to 44.2% on the tax rate and a $223,000 increase over last year, or 4.62%. When we compare that with previous years, right here on the screen, I've kind of got the 2022 and 2023, as well as both the recorded and intended for 2024. We did see quite a drop in the levy rate last year, just due to the spike in residential property values ultimately brought us down almost 9% last year on our levy rate, and this year would have seen a slight uptick in that. So as I mentioned, just due to uncertainty, we won't be presenting an exact budget for this evening and specifics, but I have included our budget information as it currently stands within your packet for your review in case you have any questions or anything that you'd like to see specifically changed on that. We will be ultimately approving budgets at the next council meeting on December 18th. And tonight is the public's opportunity to speak on the overall levy that was presented to them and give their opinions on that. So at this point, I will turn it over to Ken to give you guys an update on how 2023 has gone for the Community Development Department.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I'll just give a quick high-level overview of some notable development projects that happened in 2023. One of the largest, most notable projects, if you were out in the industrial park, would have been the development of Brick's Boatworks. That would include their roughly 15,000 square foot showroom and shop area, and then two roughly 12,000 square foot boat storage buildings. So added to our workforce, we sold 3 of our industrial park lots, and then they also added about 4 acres of other land that they bought from another landowner. So great development, adding tax base to the city. We also had the MVE Biological Solutions expansion. They're roughly 60% done with their work. If you've been out by MVE on the corner of First Avenue and Old County Road 37, they're pretty much done with the west building addition, but they also have a couple on the east side that they're working through at this point. But again, good expansion project. They're adding a number of employees and then good value added to the tax base for New Prague. Another project this fall that we issued a permit on, Quality Flow, built about a 10,000 square foot storage building on the backside of their lot in the industrial park. Again, just to keep them growing and in town. So that is another win for New Prague on the industrial business standpoint. We also had a varying different number of tenant finishes, either in strip malls or downtown. If you've been by a strip mall, you saw T-Mobile in the strip mall over by Smoke and Fire. The tobacco shop expanded out in the strip mall by Coborn's. And then a couple other ones downtown. Chalk It Up finished out the old tattoo shop that had been downtown. And then just another office that had been a medical supply store has another tenant in there for office use. So other than that, we wanted to note that we've taken in a little over $245,000 in grant funding for the city, and that is due in large part to the addition to our second planner position back in 2022, but that's really paying dividends here in 2023 and will continue into the future as we continue to have the time and resources to bring in the grant funding on a very variety of projects, from park projects to street projects, which we'll talk about one large grant we're shooting for here later on the agenda. We have issued 11 single-family home permits. It's off by the total of 14 that we had last year. We may get another one issued by the end of the year here, so we were not too far off. And then also just wanted to note about $400,000 in first-time homebuyer grants that we received from MHFA, and those were granted to first-time homebuyers. So glad that we were able to perform that grant service. We don't actually issue the loans, but area banks do take that into consideration when they're working with homeowners. So other than that, just a few variances, plats, code amendments, conditional use permits, and easement vacations that we've worked on throughout the year. So pretty busy, and we don't have it on the update here, but we just had a permit applied for Scooter Coffee Company out on the east side of town. No culvers that we know of. Just want to make that known right now. But we have other projects coming forward probably early in 2024 as well on the commercial front. So it's been a good year.
Good.
I've been asked that about 3 times today.
Were there any questions for Ken before we move on to police? Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be here. It's been about a year since I took this position, and again, thank you to the council for this opportunity to lead this group of great staff that I have. We continue to have some struggles with finding officers to work, and that we're not alone in that boat. It's statewide and nationwide. So as we continue to do things here, we're always looking at our recruitment and retention and how to retain people and find the best people that are for our community. We were able to purchase 4 new vehicles this year. There has been a shortage of police vehicles, both for manufacturing and due to the chip shortage. So we were able to find those vehicles, which is very beneficial to us. We received a grant to purchase portable radio, batteries, mics, and charging stations. Part of that grant was used for the police department, and part of it was used for the fire department. That was a joint grant that I had completed, and we were able to utilize both fire and police for that. The same would be true with a grant for 10 new AED units that we received. 5 went to the fire department, 5 went to the police department. With replacing the ones that we had in the police department, we were able to repurpose some of those throughout the city and put those in different vehicles, public works, and in some other buildings in the event that they're needed. So kind of going through the year, we looked at a lot of our procedures and things, how can we do things better. Looking specifically at our records, we were able to hire a 3-quarter records technician rather than having 2 full-time people. By doing that, I think processes are more streamlined and more beneficial to the city. Another big step forward that we took this year is a mental health program. with Peterson Mental Health, which allows our officers to have access to mental health, and it does a mental health assessment each year. It's called a checkup from the neck up. So those resources are available both to the officer and their family in the event that something would happen or they're needed. So another big one would be Narcan this year. We implemented Narcan. All the officers carry it, and we have it in the squad cars. And we have had successful uses with Narcan in our city this year. So very beneficial to the community.
And then why don't you point out we received the grant from, who was that? Centerpoint?
Centerpoint Energy, yes, that was the one that we used to purchase the radios and the lapel mics. That was both for fire and police, with your beautiful picture on there.
No, that wasn't the point of it. The point was to bring the attention. And then what's that Safewise?
SafeWise is, we were the 9th safest city in the state of Minnesota this year. SafeWise looks at crime records and statistics throughout the state of Minnesota, and New Prague was number 9, which is a very, very good number.
Yeah, because it only goes up to 5.
Oh, no.
No, it goes up to 20.
Oh, no, way more than 5.
Tim, what's the criteria for that? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah,
For the safest cities?
Yeah.
They look at like violent crime
Based on the 10,000 population?
per population.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yep, so your part 1, part 2 crimes and how that varies with your population.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah,
nice. Yeah,
thank you.
Congratulations.
thank you. Any questions for the chief? Otherwise, I'll move on to Matt.
No, thanks, Jim.
If you'd like to hand that one down, the next one up will be Chief Rinda.
Oh, we got Public Works here, so.
Yes, you do have Public Works. The fire one got slid in there. It didn't make the packet.
Oh, okay.
Better late than never. All right, so a year in review for us is we're on pace to finish with about 275 calls. We're at 254 currently as of today, 61% of those being city calls and 39% of them being in the rural area. Last year we ended with 217, which was, so we're looking at about a 27% increase in our call volume. Earlier in the year we hired 2 new members, and they are both about 3/4 of the way through their classes. We had 2 members retired in the last couple months in Brad Novak and Terry Fahey. We did receive our 2 new Chiefs vehicles, the ones that we ordered a while back, so that we got those in service this year, and those replaced the 2 older ones, and we sold one and the other one went back in the fleet. So as we look into 2024, we're looking to start replacing some of our current radios, because some of them are in the 25-year-old mark and starting to fail on us. That would be a split purchase with the rural and the city as we start doing that. We do not see any retirements in 2024, so we don't anticipate hiring any new members this year. And then as we look past 2024, the engine 2 is slated to be replaced in 2025, but could be pushed out farther if needed. And then we'll look to continue to replace our radios to get them all done.
Okay. Any questions for the fire chief? All right, thank you, Steve. Now is it Matt?
Yes, now we're
Okay.
on to Public Works.
So Public Works in 2023 experienced one of their busiest snow seasons in 20 years. Actually, it was a state record of 140 inches of snow we received in the 2022-2023 snow season. Another notable item, we built the organic waste site that was paid for by a grant, all the material, and then we did in-kind labor. Public Works staff built it itself. Inside it's concrete. There's a little landing spot of blacktop and then the fenced-in area. We also did 2 larger paver projects. As you can see in the picture, one is around in front of the Tower to Our Future. I always screw that name up. And then the other one is we had a big grass area that was behind the grandstand at the Memorial Park baseball field. We ended up doing some landscaping back there. ended up making a home plate out of brick, and then we did, there's about 8 plants back there with wood chips, so it's nicer to look at and not such an eyesore that it used to be. All the brick were actually from Main Street, so there was no cost, it was just all labor. So again, all those bricks that were on Main Street before, we tore up Main Street. We ended up taking about 12 pallets of brick, and we still have about 9 left. So it's kind of nice to have these projects that we can do, and that don't cost the city anything besides labor. Settlers Park restoration has started about a month and a half ago. If you ever drive by off of 10th Avenue and look over, I would say about 90% of the I'll call them trees, but they're what we also call pond trees. They're not a high quality tree. They ended up actually making more of a mess than anything. So majority of those are down. What's left is more of the oak trees. There's some maples out there. There'll be some of those will stay, but then again, we received grant money to do this, and we're going to restore it back to prairie grass the way it was intended. The grant we received was $35,000 for that, and then everything else is just in-kind labor on our end. Then going to the Public Works, the Parks Department, we purchased this summer the new Parks building that is over by the fire/ambulance building, emergency service building. They started renovations on it about a month and a half ago. The renovations that we're only doing right now is there was 2 large offices, and we actually tore the wall down, and we're building a break room / meeting room. Especially with roughly 10 to 12 seasonal help, it'll be nice to have that meeting room for the guys to meet in the morning and go over their projects that they're going to be doing for the day. As right now, the west building is just going to stay as cold storage for the time being until we decide what we're going to do in the future. We planted over 50 trees around the city this year. With Emerald Ash in town, we'll be losing a lot of trees, so we're trying to stay ahead of it. We planted 25, as you can see on that bottom picture is actually a gravel bed. We received money from a grant again to plant 75 trees over the 30 years. There's 25 trees in that gravel bed that get planted in spring. We actually pump the water out of the pond that's right next to the waste treatment plant. That's where that gravel bed is. And it actually, the root base almost doubles just in throughout the summer, and then we plant them in the fall. So we planted 25 out of there, and then the other 25 came out of our nursery that is over by the skate park. Our nursery is, I would say, almost empty now. That's something we started about 15 years ago, but now we're going to do everything out of the gravel bed. We repainted Memorial Park shelters. That is including the ones behind the park ballroom. It was time for a facelift. Almost every park gets repainted about every 10 years. You can tell that, or you can see, hopefully I have a kind of a designer eye. I've changed the colors of them, and I've heard good compliments, but maybe not. We'll see. We also did the renovation of Northside Park basketball court on the top picture. The city actually, the Parks / Street Department did the removal of all the old blacktop. We hired a company to do the concrete and paint the lines. Otherwise, the city did everything else. We did the landscaping around it. The utilities installed a light pole that we have a light on, and then we also added a light pole to the smaller sliding hill that's just north of that. As we mentioned before, but the basketball hoops were donated by the New Prague Boys Basketball Association, and then we installed them. And that kind of covers it, unless you guys have any questions for me.
How are those dugouts coming at Foundry Hill?
I would say they're about 99% done.
Okay.
They turned out really
Cool.
nice.
Did they? Good.
Yeah, there's a little bit of tin left as of last week. I stopped up there, so I don't know if they did any. They've been doing a lot kind of on the weekends, I would say, Ken. Yeah. And then we inspect them afterward. But yeah, they turned out really nice. They've been really good to work with.
Cool. That's good to hear. Okay.
All right, the last one we'll hit on is the Economic Development Authority. So this year, quite a bit happened throughout the year for the EDA. Both Scott Equipment and Bricks Boat Works purchased land out in the industrial park and have been moving to get their buildings up. The EDA also finished out its development responsibilities out in the industrial park, namely expanding 6th and 8th Avenue North to the end of the boundary line, so we got those all taken care of. And then Ken mentioned it in the community development part, but we had applied for about $140,000 in first-time homebuyer grants for the LeSueur County residents. I say LeSueur County because Scott County has already applied for the entirety of the county of that program, so we couldn't apply for the north. But LeSueur County has not done that, and so we were able to get the south side. And our $140,000 went so fast, the state found us additional monies and got us over $400,000 in total grants that were given out this year to first-time home buyers just on the LeSueur County side. So we are certainly working on further grants in that program so we can try to take advantage of more funding that is available for people looking to buy their first homes in New Prague.
And Josh, what are the dollars used? Is it for a down payment or for improvements or?
So I believe those dollars are used for down payments. With skyrocketing costs in housing, down payments are becoming harder and harder to scrape together, and so those grants are made available to people to get down payments on their first house.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay. Now, are you gonna talk about the proposed levy anymore?
We certainly can now, or we can wait and do it later in the meeting. I guess that would be up to you.
Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. Does anybody want to speak to the, council about the taxes, truth and taxation? Anybody want to speak to it? We don't have anybody online that wants to speak to it. Okay. Okay, hearing none, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
There's a second.
I'll second.
Rick made the motion, seconded by Maggie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay. So the next thing is wait a second here, I got something. On the agenda, it doesn't follow.
Yes, so it'd be 8B, public hearing, sorry.
No.
It'd be 8B, or 7B. The
7B.
public hearing for vacating certain easements on the plat of Whispering Pines.
Oh, okay, that's a public hearing. Gotcha.
Mitch, I'll have my
That's-
laptop plugged in for this.
That threw me off. Okay, so I'll let you talk first, Ken, and then I'll open up public hearing.
All right, there we go. Zoom into the map a little bit here. As you recall, about a month ago at the city council meeting, we had the introduction of an ordinance and call for public hearing tonight for vacation of what you're seeing in red, which would be the, back that up a little bit, the north 5 feet of a 10-foot easement that lies along the south side of the Whispering Pines plat. It actually contains two different properties, residential properties there that you can see. The actual applicant was Simon and Sarah Kalla, and they are looking at gaining that additional space for some improvements they're making to their property, and made the application to vacate the north 5 feet of that 10-foot easement. Reviewed this with Public Works and utility staff along with the private utilities. We did not receive any comment prior to the meeting about any concerns that they would have with the vacation. So with that, we do have the public hearing that we do need to hold tonight, and then we would look for consideration of adoption of that ordinance that would vacate basically just that 5-foot strip of easement land in red that we do not need.
Okay. Any questions of the council? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody want to speak to this issue of vacating certain easements in the plat of Whispering Pines? Anybody want to speak to that? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, Rick and Bruce, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. So with that, now we're on to amending chapter 53 of the city code regarding refuse collection.
I'll actually let Robin take that. No, I'm just kidding. Robin and I have actually been working on the amendment to the city code, specifically relating to refuse. And what we have come to, sorry, I'm just trying to find it on the agenda here, so bear with me.
They were out of order, I think, the last one.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, I'm like, where'd it go?
I had to
So
search.
go up, right there, 8 is on there, or is that what you're not looking for? Right.
Anyway, I'll wing it. So we had talked with the council, obviously, when we were putting together the visioning document regarding our refuse code being pretty outdated. We had a provision in the code that said that we could only have one residential hauler per 7,000 people in the city. We had actually met, Robin and I had met with Rob from Lakers New Prague Sanitary to talk about the fact that we were looking at updating our code. And specifically, we had worked with Dave Anderson and Scott Riggs of Kennedy and Graven to draft just an update to the city code for you that would look at just modernizing our language to make sure that the city is up to date on statutes, that we hadn't updated that ordinance since, like, I believe it was in 1970 sometime. And basically the ordinance that was introduced for you showed, there we go, just some changes again to modernize and update. We did make a change that we still would retain only one residential hauler. And we didn't say that it was limited to 1 per 7,000 people. And then we are very specific that we can have more than one commercial hauler. We've always had multiple commercial haulers. It was debatable whether the code previously allowed that or not. We didn't differentiate between commercial and residential hauling, but we had over years, Waste Management and Lakers both doing hauling. We've had other haulers pop in and out too over time, but at this point, we really only have Waste Management and Lakers doing the commercial end of it. But the other thing we wanted to talk about, and it kind of stemmed from some questions we had for people that had apartment buildings in town regarding the base fee that we have been collecting on our utility bills, which is for a residential property owner, you're paying $5.50 as a base fee on your refuse. We talked with Rob from Lakers about that when we had met with him, and talked, is there a way that we could quit collecting that base fee? We're just remitting it back out to Lakers minus 15 cents for an administrative fee. And really just leave that on Lakers to charge what they're gonna charge for the collection. And what that led us to talk about more internally was, should we be collecting a fee for keeping the yard waste site up and maybe keeping the organics up outside of the grant running out in 3 years? We don't have a final answer on that at this point, but we wanted to kind of get the council thinking of that. But it's not much of a change, I guess, overall, I guess, to kind of summarize the change in the code. We would have a license that we would have for every hauler. We have not had one for a number of years. There had been contracts for 3 years with Lakers and other haulers in the past, but we have not had that during my tenure in the city for whatever reason, I don't know. But this would have us entering into an agreement with Lakers as a residential hauler, and it would spell out specifically what they would provide for citywide cleanup and Christmas tree pickup, which is what they have been doing, but we've never had an agreement to that effect. And they would continue to offer that. The commercial haulers would not, but this would provide a little better transparency on fees and rates, as we would need to have that up front. And those contracts would come in front of the council every 3-year time period to have you review what they're proposing to charge, what they would continue to provide for their pickup collection schedule, which again, you haven't had any input on to date either. So hopefully I covered that well. I don't know if you have anything to add, Robin, as far as that. But yeah, we didn't really want to change much. We just wanted to modernize and make sure that we are meeting current statutes and again, maintaining that one hauler system that we have currently. And this is the way that the city attorneys drafted it in order to do that.
Okay. I got a couple questions. So, does it talk about how we require bags in here?
You know, when we had met with Rob, we talked about the bag system.
Because you kind of pay for what you generate.
Yeah, and I think they would still offer that, but it might be a different fee, because obviously everybody that was paying the $5.50 a month and then just picking up bags as you needed them,
Yeah,
that might have to change. They might have to charge more for the bags, but you would still be paying roughly the same amount. We don't want to increase anybody's.
no, I understand that. I just wanna, so it's mandated, so
Yeah.
people don't, if it's not mandated, people aren't gonna do it.
Oh, to get to, yeah, so we have in our city code that you have to have a weekly collection, and obviously it's gonna be through Lakers because that's what.
Yeah, but I mean,
provides
the
for.
choice right now is buying the bags or renting a.
Correct. So they could still have that option. I think, Rob didn't give the exact number. He said very few people are actually doing the bags compared to what it had been, historically, but.
I
we would
just
still
don't want
offer
that ending up to go away, thinking
Yep.
we're opening up a issue. That's the one thing. Commercial haulers, are you talking about companies that provide roll-offs to contractors and stuff also as commercial haulers, or would this only be garbage collection?
This would just be for your collection where you're on a schedule.
Okay,
So if you have just a one-off, like a roofer getting a
Yeah.
roll-off, this wouldn't cover that necessarily. We
Okay.
could, if you would like to do that. We don't have it written
I
that way
just-
currently.
No, that's what I wanted to, I was.
And Robin
confused,
just mentioned
so-
the ordinance does not have anything about bags specifically. Again, we could put language back in there if you'd like to maintain that as an option. Right in the code, we could do that.
Yeah, okay.
I think you answered my question. I'm a bag person, so I do bags. So when you say here, you'll leave it up to them to bill, they're not gonna send out bills to residents then? For that $5 and.
I don't think so. I think it would just be a greater bag charge. We'll have to talk with Rob about that. I know one other thing we had to talk about, depending on how the discussion went tonight, was they're billing obviously every quarter for the service. So when would we exactly make the change if this is something that you guys wanted to move forward on? I think we had talked generically, well, January 1's as good a time to do it as any, but then that may not match up with where they're able to catch the process in their billing, so it may have to be further in the future. We just need to work with them further on that, so.
It sounds like they have a rolling quarterly billing, so it isn't like everybody's on the same billing quarter cycle.
It's however they signed up.
Yeah, so we were thinking if we had to push it out to early spring, like March per se, if that aligned with their billing system, but we were hopeful shortly after the new year.
I guess we probably should mandate the bags because we have mandated them on kind of regulated prior to. I mean, you either have the bags or a cart.
Yeah, you obviously have to have one or the other.
Yeah. So probably should stay.
I guess would the council like us to see bag language put back in?
We probably should, but,
Yeah,
I've never used a bag, I've always had a cart, but.
Yeah.
So, Bruce, you would purchase the bags,
like at.
but then you still got a bill for $5.50 every
Yeah.
month
White,
or every
purple, or
quarter?
Yellow
Okay,
for size.
But now that $5.50 will go away, he'll
Right.
still purchase the bag.
yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that he
Yeah.
purchased the bag and had
Oh,
another
you
separate bill.
too.
Well, no,
With renting the cart?
y-
still got
yeah,
it,
that's on
yeah.
my quarterly, so.
So they're gonna try
but
to
you still
increase the
got
bag for the
$5.50 a month.
citywide
Right.
part of the
Yep.
cost of it too? When you say citywide cleanup,
So when we had talked with Rob, we had talked about if we had a contract with them, we could do a couple of different ways where we could, collect a fee from them to basically, or they would bill us for citywide cleanup and we could remit money to them just for that, or they could just include it in their fees. And I think he seemed more willing to just say, hey, we'll just include that within our contract, that we'll do it. There won't be another bill and we won't have to exchange funds back and forth. But right now, within that, what are we collecting every month? I forget. It was, what's that?
The dollar amount? you mean?
Yeah.
$5.50
No, but I mean for
total.
for 3,000 approximate,
Yeah, 15,000.
yeah, about 15,000 a month. So we're putting money back and forth between us, and there's really no need to do that. So that agreement will really clarify what they'll have to provide, and we won't be trading money back and forth.
yeah, I'm assuming there's some logic to it. It's that every resident pays it regardless how much garbage you have or how or if you use it or don't use it,
Correct.
everyone pays it.
Yep.
So under the new system, it might not be as equitable, but it's not a big thing.
Under the new system, it'd be more users paying it, and non-users then wouldn't be paying on the utility bill. But for the most part, I mean, most people have trash that they're getting rid of, so.
Right, like you said, there's not a lot of bag users like me, but obviously if you don't use bags very much, you're not gonna pay much of the city-wide clinic in the 550 part of it.
Yeah, I hear what you're
If you
saying.
use a lot of bags, you're gonna pay more than the person with the cart. You know, but then you probably should get a cart, but.
The rental agreement we just did have some language in here over garbage and
It did.
what does that, can we just adopt that here?
No, all that said, Rick, was that they would have to have monthly, or weekly garbage collection, which is basically building upon what we had in the current code and would continue to have in the new code, that if you're a residence in town or a business for that matter, you have to have a collection and haul your waste away rather than, keeping it on your property. So again, not too many changes in there. I think there's a couple of things we wanted to, we'll have to work out detail-wise with Rob if you're, again, amenable to introducing the ordinance, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves if the council did not want to move forward with the draft, because obviously you hadn't seen anything to this point.
In the memorandum, the fourth paragraph, last sentence, it has a statement saying, additionally, clear language was added to require all haulers to enter into an agreement with each hauler, which will address rates, insurance, indemnification, and community cleanup.
Typo.
Is that meant to mean all haulers enter an agreement with the city?
City to enter into an agreement with each hauler. Sorry.
Okay, and this presumes that someday we'll have more than one hauler then?
I mean, we do have more than one hauler for commercial. We
Oh, I
currently
meant,
have
okay.
waste management, and then we have Lakers doing commercial collection. So we would assume that would continue. There may be others that would want to come in, but as far as residential, it would be limited to the one hauler. And at this point, that has only been Lakers that has even wanted to throw their hat in the ring for that.
And how do we limit that one hauler? Is that in the ordinance that you suggest?
In the current ordinance, it was limited to 1 per 7,000. We could have presumably had a waste management or one of the other haulers from the area if they would have wanted to come in. I think it would have been awfully tough for us to limit that to only Lakers with the way it's currently written. And then we would have had obviously another route of trucks running through on any given day of the week. And the main thing is we want to limit the number of vehicles that are, tromping up and down our streets on any given day. They're tough on our roads, it's loud, and can be unsightly if you had garbage happening on multiple days in a neighborhood.
So that is in this ordinance?
That
it's just
that's
one-
limiting just to one residential hauler, yes, that is in the revised code.
Okay, I'm just not seeing it then.
With no population change though.
No,
Correct.
there's,
Yeah, okay, that's going away, all right.
I don't know either.
It's on 129 it starts.
Oh,
They just got out of place, yeah,
no,
or 128.
No, I meant, where
No.
is it in the ordinance?
yeah,
The population?
no.
That we limit it to one residential?
Limitation to one.
It is under. I know it's in there, I'm trying to find it.
So we're taking out the,
One residential license under B.
Go ahead, Rob.
Granted. Me with a bad voice. Okay, so it's under the 53.05, it used to be 6. And then subdivision B,
It's about halfway down that paragraph in subdivision B. One residential license may be granted in the city, and it removes the 4 every 7,000.
Okay, there it is.
Page 133.
Yeah, 133. Did you find it? About halfway down in
so
there.
if this is put within the ordinance, it's a permanent change.
Well, until we change it again.
Correct.
So if we wanted to add another provider, we'd have to actually change an ordinance.
You would have to change the code.
Is that a good way to do it? I I mean, or can you build it, a flexibility within the ordinance?
You can write it within the ordinance. You can have a couple of different ways you can go about it. This is kind of considered a single hauler option, or organized collection almost, if you were. It's not going to that level, but like a city of Jordan, they would bid out every few years and have just one hauler do that. This is kind of in that light. There's other cities that do organized collection or a different collection system where they have multiple haulers. They might limit one hauler to 1/4 section of the town, and then they're limited to that area. That's another option you can do. And then again, you're taking multiple proposals every X number of years. But at this point, we don't believe we have any other residential haulers that want to come into New Prague. That could change in the future. As of right now, it's Bin Lakers. We know they're still interested, and we don't know that we have any other interest at this point.
So I think it could be written, though, that says one or more residential licenses may, because of the word may, be granted, instead of shall be granted.
I would caution against that, because that may get us into the situation where I think it would be too open-ended at that point. It'd be probably something I would run past city attorney on that type of language. What we believed the council wanted was to continue with one hauler. So if we're wrong on that, we can go back to the drawing board.
But I think as our city gets larger, right, so there could be a potential for multiple. I mean, it's not ideal, I agree, to have multiple haulers, and, because that was dealt with, I think, in Minneapolis or St. Paul, and it created quite a ruckus in the newspaper of multiple haulers.
Yeah,
so.
getting into that is very, very controversial most times. I know it was in Jordan. We just didn't feel there was a need for that at this point. Obviously, if the council feels differently, we can go that route, but that's a very lengthy process to go through.
And I will say, I know at a previous position, we had 4 residential haulers in town for a much smaller city than this, and it just basically creates truck traffic all day long, because they've all got random routes, so you've got 4 times the truck traffic through neighborhoods.
And if we remember, Ken, I think probably 10 years ago now too, the council fought at the state legislature where the haulers were trying to open it up.
Yeah.
And we spoke with our local state legislatures to vote against that because we wanted to keep somebody local. We didn't want a big company to come in here, run a small guy out, low bid it, drive them out of business, and then all of a sudden raise the rates.
And then there were horror stories of they couldn't fulfill routes and then they were picking up days later and stuff.
And with this particular language, it does allow the city to have more control over who the hauler is. And if it comes to a day that we'd like to increase, we can come back and amend the ordinance to allow for increased.
And for $15 a month, you can't go wrong. I mean, it's $45 a quarter. I mean, and I have the big one. I'm sure it's less for the other small ones, but it's not like it's.
I don't think we've had a big outpouring of people angry with Lakers and their collection.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. They've been great.
So to the mayor's point about the purchasing of the bags, we want to add something to
It should be
53.01
wherever.
B1, where it discusses the receptacle, because right now it's just metal or plastic with handles and tight-fitting covers, but nothing with regards to bags. So, I don't know, something by approved.
Yeah.
There's.
Yeah, if there's a majority of the council that wants to do that, we can certainly work that in.
Well, I think it should be listed, otherwise somebody's gonna challenge us or open up a can of worms, and then we're gonna have to amend the
It
ordinance.
almost has to be vendor provided bags, otherwise they don't have
Yes.
a way to collect the extra feet they need to go.
Right.
Yep.
So otherwise, people could just put a regular old trash bag on the
Yep.
Right. Where do you buy the bags? I don't even know, because I've never used it.
Coborn's,
Oh, they do
Holiday,
have.
I don't.
Ace.
Ace,
Okay.
yeah,
So is that something I guess the majority of the council wants to see?
I think so, somewhere's in there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense under 5301B, yes, and a vendor supplied, or vendor, I don't know, we'll think of some language, approved bag.
Yep.
Cause when we first went into that time, it was a new concept when New Prague did that. And a lot of cities have gone to that because you pay for what pay for what you throw away. It mandates more recycling, because I'm sure you recycle quite a bit more, and we do, or we did, or we still do, but because you didn't want to be buying bags.
So how does that, the cost of recycling then will be built into the cost of the bags?
It would have
now
to be
then?
built into the cost of the bag.
So the cost of the bags are gonna go up quite a bit then.
That's what we'll have to talk with Rob about how that would pan out. And I bet, I'm guessing we'll have to put some language in our actual contract as well to specify that. So there's not confusion about, built into their fee, it includes the recycling fee and that type of language.
So do you want, this would be the first reading on the amending?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for here tonight. Like I said, we do need to go back, with Lakers and have a little more discussion on, how things could time out and obviously the bag language, see what would be acceptable to them as well, and
And
then,
then figuring out the recycling?
yes.
Would they estimate the cost for us?
Yeah, I think they could come up with that.
Because if we're doing away with the 550, to know how that's gonna be worked out.
Still might maintain a charge.
We maintain, yes, that is true. We maintain a charge. It will not be the full 550. And like I said, we may want to retain some, refuse charge for the compost site and the organic site. I don't know that, but,
That'd be a new fee we'd be charging then.
yeah.
You'd be just changing it.
Ideally, we're not trying to increase anybody's bill overall. We're not looking to do that, but
I kind of sense that we will be.
I would hope
We're
not.
charging for a new service, the compost, right? So we're charging for.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just in the tax levy, for what, Matt and their guys do for turning the compost pile and all that. And right now Grant's paying for our organic site, so we don't really have that, for the next 3 years, but, I think there was thought that talking with Lakers that what was being collected was probably more than what we were getting out of our, citywide cleanup event. So there's kind of that in the mix too. So we just want to flesh that out a little bit more.
I don't think you're going down the road that Lakers might decrease their fees.
Oh, I don't think they'll decrease it. Yeah, we just don't want to necessarily see a
So-
net increase.
If we weren't getting our bang for the buck for the citywide cleanup, then, I mean, that's unfortunate, but this isn't gonna solve that issue. This is
No.
gonna continue it.
Is Scott County still pitching in for the citywide cleanup?
Yeah, roughly $2,100, I think, a year.
Okay.
Leesburg County doesn't at all.
No. Not in the grant. I mean, you can take items to their collection events that they have, but they're not nearly as, advertised as what Scott County does.
And the hauler doesn't charge us for all right now either. I don't think
Say
he
that again?
charges us for all he hauls away.
No, I had to pay for mattresses last year.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
Stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay for furniture, mattresses, and other, large bulky items, I guess we'd say that.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion for the first reading amending chapter 53 of the city code regarding refuse collection. And then while you work on the little tweaks that we talked about.
I'll second.
And Sean seconded it. Is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, now, the next ordinance is up for adoption. I would take a motion to approve ordinance number 345, vacating certain easements in the plat of Whispering Pines.
So moved.
There's been a motion by Rick.
Second.
And seconded by Sean. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next item up is the conditional use permit and variance to allow an indoor firing range and limited retail sales, so on and so forth.
All right, I do have a PowerPoint I will present here tonight. All right, So we have in front of you the conditional use permit C5 2023 and variance V4 2023 for an indoor firing range and limited retail sales at 100 Second Avenue Southwest. This is the proposal by applicant ATR LLC, Austin Revel, or 2F by C Tactical. We'll go way back in time to begin with here. So New Prague Flouring Mill was initially established back in 1896. That building's been added onto multiple times over the years, and ultimately the mill no longer operated in 2019 and was purchased by New Prague Mill LLC, and they are the current owner of the property to date. If you remember back in April this year, we had conditional use permit C3 2023 that approved urban flea market for limited retail sales in the very southern portion of the warehouse addition to the building. And that had given them until early October to complete some building code improvements, namely for a bathroom and some other air quality and HVAC type items that were not finished and were not met. And ultimately, it is our understanding that they are no longer leasing the building after January 2024. And that opened the door for the applicant, Mr. Revel, to come in and make an application for a new conditional use permit for an indoor firing range with limited retail sales in actually not the whole southern warehouse area, but 10,000 square feet of it. And the big issue with the request is they needed a variance to be approved that would allow them to be less than 1,000 feet from any nearest establishment that dispenses intoxicating or non-intoxicating beverages, and that's basically hard alcohol to 3.2 beer is what that is defined as in our code. Their application was to be no less than 500 feet from the closest one of those establishments, so a 500-foot reduction. We did have a public hearing, which went on about 12 minutes at the Planning Commission meeting back on November 15th. We did have 3 public comments received. Those were from the applicant, Mr. Revel, his part-time employee, Gary Whitus, along with Jerry Brown at that meeting. Mr. Revel, the applicant, noted that the facility is highly secured as required by state and federal regulations, as well as our local firing range requirements, and that the design would be done similar to what was completed at the Modern Sportsman up in Burnsville at that shooting range. Mr. Whitus and Mr. Brown both also commented that they believe the range would be an asset to the community, noting roughly 35-minute drive that people have to make currently in order to utilize a firing range for their needs. The Planning Commission did have general discussion. I think overall the discussion went on a little over an hour. We talked about limiting hours of operations beyond what the ordinance would normally require, and that was due to the proximity of nearby homes and businesses, and then specifically how the applicant would deal with intoxicated customers. I believe we talked about customers not only that are intoxicated by alcohol, but also by cannabis and THC, which are still prohibited federally. And Mr. Revel noted that it's very important that he follow through on not allowing those people to utilize that facility for those federal regulations. The Planning Commission did ultimately recommend approval on a 4-0 vote with findings and conditions in the staff report. I did want to note we did, following the meeting, make one tweak to finding D of the variance for the finding regarding uniqueness. While it was noted in the staff report and in the finding that this property was deemed unique by the fact that there was close proximity to downtown and that the property was old, we wanted to clarify that it's also unique because there are 5 different zoning districts within a block of the property, ranging from B3 highway commercial to downtown business to high-density residential, and then 2 other single-family districts. So we just wanted to know it was a very unique area of town where we really didn't have that situation occurring with that many zoning districts in one block range. And then also noting that the property is unique just in the fact that it is developed over that 100+ year time period. So that was a little bit of a tweak that was made at the suggestion of City Attorney Scott Riggs. We'll get into a little bit of the overview here. You can see the map showing the 5 different districts from B3 on the west side of the railroad. The purple, pink color being industrial districts that are not just including the mill, but also including some buildings to the south, including the New Prague Bread and Pie Company, and then Rinda Landscaping and Connolly Plumbing, and then Mock Lumber across the street to the east there. And then obviously you have the Bros Hotel, kind of Kindy Corner to the northeast, and then single-family and multifamily residential immediately to the south and southeast. The picture that I show on this slide here shows where they would add the new front entrance. It would actually increase the appearance of that greatly by adding kind of an awning, a new front door and a window, closing up the overhead garage door here and adding a service door, or actually utilizing the door that I think that's there currently for service door for employees. Go back here, and obviously they would be paving and adding 2 ADA parking stalls right in front of the front door as well for ADA compliance. Map on the overhead now is the map showing the number of drinking establishments that had been in place or are currently in place. Have noted that obviously the Rusty Spoke and the Bros Hotel do not currently have liquor licenses, but they both have actually applied for liquor license that may come in front of the council within the next few weeks here. But other ones that are within the limit are City Club and the Depot with a setup license, and then the KC Hall. Chalk It Up actually no longer is operating, so they are no longer actually counting in that range either. But there are obviously continually changing circumstances in the downtown area that also makes the property unique. Just hard to get away from that in the downtown area. Regarding parking with the urban flea market conditional use permit, the current applicant is looking to stripe parking spaces as has been approved back with that previous approval. And that will provide for 52 parking spaces in addition to the 2 additional ADA spaces up front in front of the building. A little hard to see in the overhead, but the 10,000 square foot build out is depicted within the area on the left side of the screen there. You have 2 range areas, both of them have a total of 8 shooting lanes within them, 2 in each of the 2 range areas. There's also a classroom, virtual reality room, a couple of offices, and a roughly 2,000 square foot retail area. And that's an increase from the little bit over 700 square feet that Mr. Revel currently has. So obviously expand the offerings he'll be able to provide. And then here's just a drawing elevation of that east elevation of the building showing the awning, the window, and the front door for the new main entrance that would be added to the building. So make it a little more attractive looking and more welcoming. And then again, just some photos here. You can see we have the one single family home that's within under 150 feet from the corner of the building. If you're actually measuring from the edge of the range to the edge of the single family home, it's about 168 feet. But again, we've already had a paved area here where they would stripe parking. There's plenty of other area that could be paved, but they don't need to do that for the needs of the range. Just some other shots of the property there. It has been getting cleaned up over the past few months. It's looking quite a bit better than it had been even earlier this year. And just some final photos here. Again, you can see kind of the proximity of the home. We didn't have anything in our code saying that a range had to be X number of feet away from any single family home. It just said they couldn't be immediately adjacent, and our code was written that a street provides for that separation. So it wasn't a distance thing, it just needed to be separated by right of way, which we do have being met here. So really the biggest thing to be taken into consideration is the variance to allow it to be less than 1,000 feet, or less than 1,000 feet, but no more than, or no less than 500 feet from a business that has alcohol being dispensed on the property. So ultimately, staff and the planning commission recommend approval of the conditional use permit and variance with the findings and conditions that are listed in the resolution, noting that that contains just the one change to finding D for the variance to clarify the uniqueness of the property. And with that, I think I'll just leave on the overhead, the air photo and, site plan and building elevation. And again, we do have the applicant, Mr. Revel in the audience here tonight, if you do have any additional questions or, need any clarification on anything.
Okay, does council have any questions?
I have a couple.
Yep, go ahead.
I can't locate where the discussion was with security, but I thought security talked about cameras inside the building. I'm just wondering, I didn't see in the conditions there's cameras on the outside the building. Is there? And I just wondered if you were going to have cameras on the outside?
Cameras throughout the building.
Outside the building?
Not, we'll have it at the main entrance, but inside the building, all exits and entrances. Yes, sir.
So, but someone approaching the building would be seen on camera?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We'll have it immediately at the main entrance.
yeah. That's not a condition though, is it?
Not a condition. Some cities required, access to the camera systems that they had, but we didn't have that in our code, and ultimately, I think Tim didn't think that it was a necessary requirement to have that.
I think it's a great idea you're doing it, and I just recommend it. Obviously, I worked at a bank, and that it was very helpful to us, and I think it'd be helpful to you just to be able to monitor it. And it helps you more than maybe anything else, just to see what's going on. If somebody falls or whatever,
Absolutely.
it's
And
helpful to
we
monitor.
currently operate cameras at our current location as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be even something to think about, to put a camera pointed toward the parking area, because that's where you see some issues.
Sure.
Quite often too, just for your own benefit anyway.
Sure.
Austin, you gotta state your name and address.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
For our many viewers out there.
Oh, yes. Austin Revel, 203 Fifth Avenue Northwest, New Prague, Minnesota.
Okay.
And my second question isn't so much for you, Austin, but just to understand how this works. When we have a building like this, the conditional use is going for the whole legal description, the whole parcel, it looks like. So when we're requiring 52 parking spots there, is that, as the rest of the property fully develops, that's gonna be a limiting condition for other uses then, right?
Yeah, so obviously, Mr. Revel's use did not require all 52 of those. That was just what had been provided for in the drawing before. I think, we required at minimum,
I saw 22 someplace.
yeah,
24?
24, I believe.
So is that what's in the conditional, is that what's listed, not the 52 then?
Let's see here.
Too many papers here to go through where that is.
To that?
All right, so we require a total of 24 minimum for the range itself.
So does the conditional use spell that out?
I believe so. Yeah, we have condition number 6 requires that they have at least 24 minimum parking spaces required.
Okay,
So-
and then the picture that we showed of the parking, is that the 24 or the 52?
That shows the 52, and we just showed that just for,
You went there.
just for reference on that's what you could fit in that area that
Right.
was required for urban flea market, because they had a very large retail area, but we don't have that requirement, obviously, with 2,000 square feet of retail and then the 8 lanes, so.
Well, I wondered, looking at that picture, it seemed like that might cause some future consternation with other people in other buildings there, because it would take up a lot of parking, but if it's only 24, it's not gonna take up that much.
It won't take up the whole area, and it may be that the building owners want to stripe that area for other future uses that we don't know about yet at this point,
Right, but
which is fine, but,
another use can't use the 24.
oh, they're 24? No, that would have to
That-
be dedicated for this use, correct?
Right, and when I saw it, when you heard 52, I thought, holy cats, that's a lot. That's gonna limit somebody else wanting to use a different part of the building. But, okay, that's clear.
Nope, and then, like I mentioned, there's a number of other gravel areas that can be paved and
Yeah,
utilized, so a lot of, potential there. But we don't know of other proposals at this point, so we're limiting it to just what Mr. Revel is using, and that's what they'll need to provide.
that was my only questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Austin. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to approve the planning and zoning's recommendation.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, and then that would be for resolution 23-12-04-03, sorry. So with that, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Good
So
luck.
then,
Good luck, Austin.
so then we're up to the next resolution, which is supporting a MnDOT local road improvement program grant. Who
I will
wants-
provide background on it if I can find it.
Yeah,
One
it's
second.
the next item. Right,
Page 183.
I don't know what's going on.
And Sean, you're on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking for it, yeah.
Studying that computer.
I'm using the PDF, probably shouldn't be. All right. So again, this is an item we're kind of revisiting from the council, and SCH had presented the feasibility study for 10th Avenue and the reconstruction, or I should say mill and overlay of that road. We had talked about some medians and some other improvements that could be made along with the mini roundabout at 3rd and 10th Avenue. We kind of took a step back and noted that there were some grant opportunities that we could look into. So we did that. We are planning to submit at the end of the week, pending your approval here tonight, a grant application for the local roadway improvement program that would categorize 10th Avenue Southeast as a road of regional or route of regional significance. And what this grant will cover and can cover, if we're granted the grant, obviously, would be up to 1.5 million. We do not have any required local match, and cover anything from construction costs, but not include engineering, not include inspection, and not include right-of-way acquisition. So we have worked with city engineer. When I had actually drafted the memo on Friday, Chris was still revising our estimate, which we expected for construction to be at about $121,000. Looks like that is now about $909,000. That does not include any contingencies, so that may go up a little bit, but as we finalize that number, we're probably around that $950,000 range. But that is what we would have with no match required, and we could hopefully get that covered. And what this would do, kind of relating to our earlier discussion about state aid, is that would take away our need for utilizing state aid money if we could use this grant versus, so would be a huge benefit if we can get the funding. Obviously, we've got some crossings that we're proposing to add between different intersections in addition to that mini roundabout at 3rd. And the unfortunate part is we would not know until late March of 2024 if we're granted the money, but we think it's worthwhile moving forward with this. We did get a letter of support from LeSueur County and their highway engineer, Dave Teagues, which was in the packet for review. And really the only other thing we need to do to submit the grant is have your approval by resolution supporting the grant application here tonight. So we have to actually submit by the end of the day Friday for the grant funds. But finally, I just want to put it on the packet, the schematic. It's the same drawings that were in the feasibility study that we looked at for the 2024 CIP originally. But again, this would be a 2025 project if we're awarded funds. If you have any questions, I can stand for those as well.
Then did that 900,000, did that include the raised medians, right?
Include the raised medians. It would not include any plantings in them if we wanted to go that route. I believe that was something that we would do in kind if we're able to get the money.
so then,
It would provide everything other than planting plants if we wanted to put plants in there.
so we wouldn't have to worry about assessments or anything?
We weren't looking at assessments for 10th Avenue anyway, I don't believe, Josh.
No, I don't believe, the only assessments that were potentially being looked at were the townhomes, just south of Hy-Vee there. Because otherwise, 10th Avenue doesn't really have any accesses from residential lots, and it's in some cases, the third frontage for a few lots. And so, we were not actually looking at any assessments other than potentially those townhomes, for 10th Avenue.
Good.
So I was a little confused. Were we planning to do total reconstruction all the way to 29?
Or just mill and overlay, or maybe I'm not saying that right. Mill and overlay? Yeah.
It's mill and overlay and a roundabout.
And a roundabout.
Islands.
Yep.
So there's no reconstruction?
No reconstruction.
Well, if you find something,
Repair a curb here and there, or maybe,
Repairs.
There's no planned full reconstruction.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, utilities are from that 2000 to 2005 era, I believe, along with the road for that matter, but.
Okay,
So, just a quick question. So if I'm looking at the raised median, it stops at Village Street for just that little bit of a curve? And then,
And I should note that this will be tweaked further before this turn in. I can't say that those are accurate to what we would actually construct.
okay,
This was from that feasibility. I know questions got raised regarding, are the turn lanes too large? Do we need turn lanes in certain areas? So those would be details to be worked out yet. This would just be for the general idea again of that mill and overlay, putting in medians and putting in that mini roundabout.
So, yeah, I believe this was initially done, leaving the turn lanes exactly as they are existing now, which the city engineer did say there are some instances where the turn lanes are far longer than they need to be, and potentially be shortened. So this is more of just a schematic, what it could look like before we go into final detail.
And I think there was even discussion about, do we need the medians or not?
Correct.
Correct.
So,
Yep. We just figured if we're applying for money, we'll go for everything. If we
Right.
don't end up wanting to do it, we at least would either have the money there on the table, or if you're like, no, we don't want to do that, then we could.
take a different plan.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I'd take a motion for the resolution.
so moved?
Maggie made the,
I'll second.
excuse me,
Doesn't matter.
I only heard Rick.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm not
Made the
gonna wrestle
motion,
you for
no,
it.
I just, Rick seconded it. Is there any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right. So now we're to general business.
There's nothing on the agenda.
No, I understand that, but I
Oh,
didn't know.
I
if
was
you
gonna do
wanted
it, I was gonna do
expound.
under miscellaneous.
Oh,
too.
under miscellaneous,
Yeah.
okay. So then I'll go around the horn. Fire chief. Matt? Tim? Ken?
Nope.
Rob?
Sorry. I left a memo with some papers at each of your spots. That's just for review from now until the next agenda is released. It's pertaining to ESST or ESSL, emergency sick and safe time, or emergency sick and safe leave, as some people refer to it. It was something that was passed in legislation recently and goes into effect January 1 of 2024. So right now, we just have some draft preliminary language that we would propose for the personnel handbook. Basically looking to use existing leave for full-time staff or for those that already receive leave time from the city. And then it would expand per legislation that we need to extend it to part-time and seasonal staff. Anyone that meets the certain hours within the threshold for each year. So we've been working with Abdo on it and had a small peer group meeting to kind of talk with like-sized cities about how they were going to do it. So most of the language that you'll see is model template. Again, just kind of waiting to hear back from them on how it fits into our policy, so.
Does this follow state statute or, I mean, how much leeway does the city have?
Not a whole lot.
Can
So-
they add anything over and above what state?
Yes, it's the minimum, what the Department of Labor is requesting is the minimum
Okay.
of what we need to provide to folks.
And does that follow this, or are we going above and beyond that?
No, we're following the minimum, so that's where, like I said, anyone already receiving leave, it will basically not be an increase nor decrease, it's gonna stay the same. We just have to classify it slightly differently
Okay.
of what we can title it and the parameters of how they can use it. So the extension of what we're essentially adding is extending it to part-time and seasonal folks that work more than 80 hours in a fiscal or calendar year.
And then that's been communicated to Abdo, that we just want to follow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I was just curious, and I'm not saying I'm for or against if we wanted to add something else, I just want
Right.
to make sure I have all the information.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's actually, pretty common in this small group. I think it was 4 or 5 of us, peer cities that, you know, everybody's kind of trying to find like, how do we fit it in current procedures, with while still following, what Department of Labor calls for extending it to those additional staff, so. But, so that is my only update.
Okay, Josh.
Yes, I wanted to update the council on where we are currently at with our talks to the Department of Revenue. So speaking with City Attorney Scott Riggs, actually right before this meeting, he said we are at a point now where the Department of Revenue hasn't really made a decision one way or the other, but we are coming up on kind of the end of the year at this point. And so it was his recommendation at this point, and it sounds like the department may even semi-expect it, that to meet with a, we'll say, contingent of New Prague folks to talk to the commissioner. In Scott Riggs' mind, he thought probably the mayor, myself, and another council member. But I guess that would be up to the city council as to whether they want to pursue the ability to potentially levy the 5.1 that was intended, or if we'd like to go another route. As I stated, I did share with you levy language that basically states that if we don't certify a levy by the 5th day after the 20th day of December, it does revert to the previous year's levy. So that would ultimately have us, if that carries out, that would have us levying at $4,824,628, which was last year's levy, right on the nose, and would be $223,070 short of what our preliminary levy was for this year. So I guess at this point, it becomes a council decision. Do we want to kind of continue pushing this and speak with an appeal to the commissioner directly? Or is there another route that we as a city want to take?
Well, I don't even know if we had really decided on the 5.1% yet.
Correct. Well, so we had the preliminary levy of the
Right.
5.1, and so it's talking about whether we want to continue to have that ability to go up to 5.1, or if we fell back onto this statute language, it would be falling back to the 4.8 of last year.
And then when does the final levy have to be?
Well, so that's the question. So if you fall, according to this statute language, if you fall back to the 4.8, you just don't approve a levy.
I understand that, but
Otherwise,
final, so the 5.1.
the 5.1, yes.
Preliminary.
Yeah, so if we did, if we appealed to the commissioner and got that appeal according to statute language, levies, and it's actually the same language here right in front of you, must be certified by the fifth working day after December 20th.
Okay, so that's coming pretty quickly. And we don't have our final budget, right? I mean, so if we're working toward 4.8, we're short 223.
Correct, and so.
Is there anything in the budget that we can change?
Yep, so if we go to the 4.8, and I kind of actually laid it out in the memo I gave you talking about different scenarios. I didn't lay directly out the 4.8, but I described in that memo that we do have over $500,000 of unbudgeted interest that would be available. So generally, I wouldn't recommend budgeting using interest just due to the fluctuations. One year you may get a lot of interest, and then all of a sudden that interest disappears, and now you're looking to either have to make cuts or levy for that. So generally, I would recommend using interest to fund into equipment funds or facility funds or something where projects, and it will get spent later, but isn't directly tied to your operating budget. In this case, we would have that money available in '24 to make up some sort of shortfall in terms of wherever we wanted to budget to make up that 223 or what was down to about probably 170 as we brought it down from the 5.1.
So the items that you had identified here, back when we were thinking worst case scenario.
Correct.
I guess personally, what I'd like to see is you work with the 4.8, because I wasn't sold on the 5.1. I mean, I know you worked it down from 6. Was it 6 that we gave the levy? But I was still hoping to get underneath that number. And you came up with a list here, but I guess, which is substantially more, was that the 1.1 that we needed? No, not quite. But if we stuck with the 4.8 and didn't levy, that'd be easier for me to agree with last year's than or just approve the 5.1. I'd like to see maybe what city staff can come up with for a list on where that 223 might come from.
So I will,
Or list all the items that we have flexibility at, and then the council can go through and maybe have one, doesn't have to be a 2-hour meeting, we could go through and try to decide as a council where we want it.
so I will say that that list that I've got in that memo on page 5 is basically the list of things that I would consider to be flexible. And this is something that I have worked with the department heads on. It's all things that I, as a professional, would say that this city needs, quite frankly, as it continues to grow to meet the needs of a growing city. But they are things that, if they need to be delayed, can be delayed, but I would fully expect at some point for all of these purchases to be made within the city. As the city continues to grow, we are naturally going to have sidewalk and trail expansion that we need to do throughout the city. I know the park board's been putting off a number of expansions for a number of years. City Hall, our facility study has mentioned that we will, if not remodeling, at least do some sort of maintenance on this building, and so that was setting money aside for that. That golf transfer is one that we've been doing for a number of years, and I know we are working it down, but it is still there. We do have parks equipment, police equipment, IT equipment, fire radios, crack sealing, modernizing our zoning code that is over 50 years old at this point. In many ways, these are all things that the city will have to take on at some point. And that is why my professional recommendation at this point would be to use the interest earnings that we would be taking on next year to come to that last discussed budget, which at this point was sitting at about $5,049,000, about $60,000 down from the preliminary. But no, we hadn't come to a final agreement on the council as to what we would want to set that final levy at. I know the exact percentage-wise we were looking at before this started a couple weeks ago was 4.61% over last year. And so we are certainly open to conversations, but I would say if the council is looking for flexibility in our budget, it's these dotted items right here, plus the little over $500,000 in interest that we did not previously budget, that would add flexibility to that.
So to bring it back down to the 4.8, 3 of us absentee next meeting would do that, wouldn't it?
I do not exactly know how that process would work.
No.
That would be something that I would talk to the city attorney about that. But yeah, so but at the next meeting, we would be looking to approve the budget for the 2024 year. And if there's further guidance beyond where it currently stands, I would certainly appreciate that so that I can try to make those changes.
If we approve it with the 4.8 and make up the difference with 200,000, I got you.
Correct, yeah, I mean, and that is what I'm recommending doing with the interest.
Yeah, but we're still not bringing it down further from 5.1.
So we preliminary levied at $5.1 million.
Oh, that was it was at 5.1.
That was what they whittled it down to from the 6 that we
I
gave.
got you.
we
I
preliminary levied
had
it.
6 stuck in my head.
We preliminary
Okay.
levied at 5.1.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then we took off about $60,000 of that down to $5,049,000.
Yeah.
And that is where the budget has stood since like October 1, I think, when we had a budget meeting.
Well, there's still a lot of issues that I wanted to talk about anyways on the budget. One is the COLA. I'd like to see that. I'd like to have the discussion on the COLA as far as the taking just that whole budget and then equally dividing it out amongst the staff, not based on wages. I think that's fair because everybody pays the same for eggs and gas and the things that COLA is there for. I'm not necessarily sold on the 4% plus the steps, which made it 6.5% increase.
You know, Sean, I will say it's kind of frustrating because we've been talking 4% since August, and this is the first.
You've
that
been
I've
talking
heard.
4%.
We as a council, and the number of times we've met have been talking 4%, and 2 weeks out from an approved budget, it is kind of frustrating to hear. And I'm not saying we can't change the COLA, I'm just saying to completely revamp the formula does take a lot of staff time, and it would have been nice to have
I've been
those
mentioning that
conversations.
for years, even though when you weren't here, but I've said it several times in this meeting, always waiting for it to get discussed, and it just gets run over. That here's the wage increase that I'm giving myself.
But
Is what you were doing.
But do you understand the frustration that I have, knowing that we as a council, our first meeting was August 29th, and it did not come up for this year. And then we met again in September and did not come up. We met again October 24th, and it again did not come up.
That's not true. I've mentioned that 4%. I've questioned it every meeting, I could swear.
And I guess.
I wanna know where it's
And I
gonna
guess
go.
the council did not inform us to bring it down from that 4%.
I don't, well, maybe not specifically, but I think my personal feeling is that we all thought we were gonna have this discussion to try to decide on what. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always thought that unless you guys locked in on it, and that's fine, I'm one vote, you know. But I've brought this up all the way along. I see,
Yeah, you have,
I see the top staff going like at this level and more than half the other people barely going up. Because the percentage on the COLA, for example, is all based on overall salary. But the idea of COLA is to take care of the cost of living adjustments. That's what it is. And the cost of living is no different for eggs and milk and natural gas, and electricity is no different for the bottom 2/3 of the employees as opposed to the top third. So that's my general feeling, and I've stated it for, well, as long as you guys have been on it every year, that we should take a look at that. And to be honest with you, I thought maybe it was going in that direction this year. So I just saw inflation was going at 3% this last month. Does it have to be 4 when we had years of deflation and we were still given 2.75 and 3% year after year after year? And that is our biggest single expense.
Yep.
And that's where we need to, personally, we need to address it a little bit. At least slow it down and at least make it somewhat fair. Is my personal feeling.
Okay. Any other contributions to that?
Well, do you guys agree or don't? I mean, if we don't, then let's just move on. We
No,
can just,
I think,
don't have to have a,
no, but I kind of agree with, we have been talking about it. And
I know it's an uncomfortable situation,
No,
trust me. It
I
affects a
am-
lot of people that I
Yes, it
consider
does.
friends of mine, you know, but
and, I guess maybe be more aggressive, maybe take that on the first point and not worry about the line items, you know, as much. Cause I do believe that we have to, you know, pay to keep quality people. Because there is an expense with losing people all the time. That isn't in writing, and,
So I will say we are certainly free to adjust and or pay employees how we feel best suits for the city.
I'd just like to
yeah.
know what if it went to 3%? If it went to 3%, how does that affect this?
I do not have those numbers off
No,
the top
I
of my
know.
head.
I mean,
I do know the last few times if you remember right, I've shared that graph with the historic rises, and we did have a few years there where the city was outpacing, I guess what you would say as national inflation and or Social Security.
I'd say more than a
Is
few.
what
I'd say maybe a decade, to be honest, this last
I
decade.
provided the graph. It was
Yeah.
it was about 6 years, if I remember right off the top of my head, and then starting in about 2019, 2020. that is when you actually saw the spikes from everybody else. So if you take it over the last 10 years, from 2013 to now, we come out to about equal at the end. I mean, you see the cities kind of go like this and everyone else is kind of go like this into it. If you take it over the last 5 years, Social Security and or inflation has certainly outspiked the city's COLA per se. And so I think there's certainly a swing as to what do we use as a gauge. Now, I understand what you're saying, Sean, about potentially revamping and looking at it. That is certainly a large conversation, and I know the council has discussed it in part here or there, but at least in my 2.5 years there, discussions have always happened, and then we've gone back into kind of what we had been doing. If there is something that we are looking at changing, and that is I would argue, a large compensation talk, and it may be larger than what we have for 2 weeks in front of us here, but obviously if that's the direction that the council wants us to take, we can certainly attempt to take it on, but I feel that that is a lot more work than simply saying we're just going to divide stuff up, because our current pay grids and how we have approved our compensation plans is kind of built off of these grades, steps, and everyone fitting into those all at the same time, and which is kind of the common pay structure across much of the state of Minnesota for public employees. I won't say all, because obviously I don't know the pay structure for every entity, but I know it is the common pay structure across much of the state.
Well, I'll tell you that I read the newspaper every day, and I saw that after we gave 3%, the county of St. Louis County up in northern Minnesota only gave 2.5, and Ramsey County only gave 2.25. And so there are those other counties that have been controlling our rate of growth in compensation, and every year we kick this can down the road. Even last year, I know it was your first budget year last year, but I brought this up then, and the council, all of a sudden it comes to crunch time, and all of a sudden it's still in there, and it's essentially you guys deciding what your own wage increase is.
We are certainly recommending, and it's certainly based off recommending what we're seeing around us. And for better or for worse, we are in competition with the cities around us, and those cities.
And we've lost one person that I can, maybe two, and I think one wasn't even because of compensation, but one for sure that was compensation, and then everybody else was all retirement.
I know that we've lost officers. I know that we have lost employees across other departments. We have lost utility, like we have I think we've lost utilities person within the last couple of weeks. And so, yes, it is certainly an issue, and we can certainly talk about it. I'm not saying not to talk about it. I'm just saying that we aren't setting our own wage. We are coming to you with a recommendation based off what we are seeing, and then you guys are approving it. So it's not like we set our own 3% last year.
I know that where my frustration comes in though, Josh, is for 10 years we've tried to talk about it, and it just never gets, nothing ever gets solved. It just always comes down to this crunch time where.
And maybe we end that now and put it on for next year right off the bat.
And that's been done before too.
We've
But
talked about that too, but
we could carry through with that because it
Let's
is
just
a
carry
very
through with it.
unbalanced system.
You know, if we wanna talk about it, let's do it earlier. Just deal with that, and then, because that whole structure, we have been talking about revising it. But
it would likely, I would recommend a much larger compensation and benefits study across the board.
absolutely,
Wages, benefits, health insurance, talk about all of it.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think we could have one work session.
work
just
session
devoted
and do it
to-
that way, and then come to a consensus, so we don't have this issue at budget time. They'll have their marching orders with the percentages, it's gonna help them budget. May not happen this year, it's gonna happen next year. I'll make it happen.
Well, I appreciate that. We haven't done it for.
No,
I know. Well, and you
We all
haven't
just,
been on
when
the
we
whole
go
time,
in for the next budget meeting next year, we'll all remember it's
yeah,
gonna be us
we'll
five.
remember it, but we always start too
We've
late.
done it, every one of us has been here 3 or 4 years, and we've had the same discussion.
And then it gets dragged
Just
out, and
cannot
it's,
keep growing with steps and guaranteed inflation, 6.83 as we keep adding people. It was what, $680,000? That's the majority of our levy increase is going to wage and benefits. And
What's
to be honest with you,
$680,000?
or whatever, don't quote me, I just threw out a number. That 680 was probably wrong, but what was the total wage and, on the budget?
The total wage?
And step increase?
Wage and benefits? I don't know.
Yeah, I was trying to find that.
283 maybe, or?
I think with salaries and benefits, it was around 6%. I mean, that's what,
6.63 I wanted to say, but again, I'm throwing out numbers that I looked at, a lot of numbers, but.
so I guess all that to circle back around, do we want to put a committee together to go talk to the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue?
I would suggest,
And it may be a phone call. I'm not saying we'd go up to St. Paul. It may end up being a Zoom call or however that works out. But I know that was Scott Riggs's. If we want to continue down this path, then that was his.
Those
next
are our two
recommendation.
options.
That was his next recommendation. If we want to continue down that path of basically being able to set our levy wherever we want below 5.1.
or just.
I apologize for asking again, but so when he says that, does he feel like he's at a dead end?
I mean, yeah, he kind of feels like he doesn't know if the state is ready to move on this fast enough for what we would actually need it. That's kind of, he hasn't gotten a yes or a no from them, kind of, we're considering it. And so his recommendation tonight is if we want to, he basically said it may be time that if we want to keep pushing on this, it may be time to talk. And it sounds like they are fully expecting us to show up and talk to them. What that would actually turn into, I don't know.
Well, I certainly felt much different about it before we had this potential other option. But now that we have this other potential option, I guess my feeling is that we cut bait and move on. The number $222,000 is not it's a significant number, but it's something I think that we can just deal with. But I guess I want to make sure that we feel comfortable that it seems a little awkward to me that we can proactively say we're not going to pass a levy or certify a levy. So it would seem to be written in the statutes to provide, that thing where people are fighting and they can't agree on anything. But I would want to make sure that our attorney feels good that we can do a premeditated non-certification and that we're going to definitely get this levy that we think we're going to get. And if he feels that, then I think we should cut bait, would be my opinion. If he feels very comfortable with being able to provide that to us. That's where I would stand.
Ditto.
Provide what, to the 5.1?
The 4.82.
Oh, the 4.8, okay, I just want, okay.
Yep,
So then we still have to make cuts.
yeah.
But if that's at risk.
And that's where
if
it
there's
comes back
any-
to mine.
If he has any qualm about not being able to get to 4.824, then I think we still need to work our tails off with begging.
But it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have his exact feelings on, basically his thought on this is it's in the state statute. I mean, it basically says if you don't certify, then it goes to the amount prior.
And it doesn't say anything about, us making that decision prior, I mean, I think, Bruce, what you're trying to say is that maybe we come to consensus that we're not going to certify a levy. And can we do that
Does
versus?
the law allow us not to do it?
Right, yeah, versus we're up here to certify a levy and we don't get enough votes to
Right.
certify it. Yes.
And I think the law has to be there to allow it, because I could see that happening in a smaller community. You get maybe not enough, they're incorporated, they don't have either enough attending a council meeting or where nobody can agree on anything.
Do you understand the question?
I do, but I'm not really in a position to answer that at this
I
point.
understand.
I was basically told that if we'd like to continue potentially talking to the commissioners, talk to the council to see if they want to put together a party of two to have that conversation. Knowing that the next time we'll meet will likely at that point be too late if we decide to go down that path.
I notice this statute is totally a different statute than the statute we're dealing with
The statute we're
Another
dealing with
issue.
before actually deals specifically with the preliminary levy, and actually the same language is in that statute, that if we failed to set a preliminary levy by September 30th, this would again apply, that we would just revert to the previous year. So that language appears both in the preliminary levy statute as well as the certification of the final levy.
I agree with Bruce that, I don't know that a conversation's gonna get us anything, and especially not get us an answer on that particular phone call.
Timely.
Exactly. Because they haven't, given us any inkling that they're moving in one direction or the other, and they've had ample time.
The magnitude is totally different now. What we were talking about, over 20% of our
Yes.
number
Yeah.
before, and now it's 220. It's a much smaller number.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I suddenly don't
So
feel
the
like
budget
throwing
has
up.
to, the budget has to meet the levy.
I mean, so,
In
I
this
mean,
case.
you can over budget what your levy has if you've got the revenue sources such as
yeah,
fund balance
but-
or otherwise to make up for it.
But if you don't, it's gonna have to match the levy
We have to make cuts.
and make cuts or whatever.
And alls we were given is 8 things, 10 things. And I'd like to see if there's more. And I'm not saying it's gonna come out of benefits, but it's something that we should be looking at and discussing. And that was the whole point of that. Not just say, oh, we're gonna get rid of a squad car and a stump grinder
Yeah, man.
and a,
Next
Trail
July, we
sidewalk.
definitely should have that talk.
because those are things that the city might want. And again, we have to be prudent about
Absolutely.
everything. And we're just given,
Yep, so I will say, Sean,
I
while
know.
I don't have those exact numbers for what it would cost from 0.5% COLA in front of me, I will say you certainly have you should have your budget packets that I've shared with you.
Yep.
That you can certainly look through if you go through there and you, decide we need 4 less reams of paper or something like that. But, these were the items that I saw that are the most movable. And if we're looking at a $223,000 budget shortfall, without even doing this math, I can see that we're probably up over 500,000 right here. And so I was trying to give you guys succinct options other than giving you a list of 20,000 different things we can go through, because that conversation then takes us 4 days to get through instead of giving you guys my professional opinion on what we could be doing here. And then that's what I've been attempting to do through this whole budget process, is to provide you guys with my professional opinion that I've been hired to get through this budget process. And dissecting every single little thing we do, I get that the council needs to approve the budget, but at some point it feels like, what am I doing through this budget process if you guys just want to do the whole thing?
no, I don't wanna do the whole thing. I just wanna be given the options of everything. And it's always that your raise is never part of it. That's never brought up, you know? So that's just one aspect of it. And I'm not saying that's where it's even gonna come out of. The thing is that you decide, instead of the council decides, well, here's the things that we can
Well,
play with.
but, yeah.
But
we
that,
do-
no, that's just been,
But we do decide to give them the raise or not.
right, and what I'm trying to do is I'm just kinda curious what the
I
teacher's
understand.
contract said this year. You know, were they at 4%? Maybe once, but I know back when we were giving 3% out to city staff, they were at 1.75 and 2.0 and whatever else. And, you know, I mean, I hear about it. I have people tell me all the time, it's like, I'm not getting 4% plus steps and whatever else, you know? So I'm just kinda curious. I was just Googling it here and I didn't find it, but I'm sure I see plenty of teachers, they can, on a daily basis, they can tell me where they're going. And
Yeah,
that's
we don't want
reality.
nothing to do with
And
teachers.
if Ramsey County's going 2.5 and we're giving 4, that's a big difference, you know? And there are counties out there that seem to be beating us, and it's, you know, again, it's not, I just wanna have the discussion, and we're just always, it was just like the insurance benefits. Every year it was just funneled to us, and now we said, well, wait a minute, let's see if we can move this around. What happens if the deductible goes up from 2,500 to 3,500, cause that's more realistic? And we have people in private business that everybody's deductible is much higher, and it's just gone up steady as the private sector needs to control costs. But that's one thing, and that's our biggest issue here, is that we need to just address the skyrocketing employee costs, so.
Maggie, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay. Rick?
Nothing.
Bruce?
I just want to speak to that just a little bit, because I think we did start this conversation about looking at that more closely when I asked for the general FTEs and looking at the salary over time to look at that and trying to find benchmarks that we can start to look at discussing that. And then Josh brought in more of an analysis on the history of COLA and how we measured against that. So I think we at least started that more holistic conversation about compensation and things like that.
I do remember that, yes.
But I do think that, I think we lost a couple steps here because we didn't have the budget conversation that I anticipated and we thought we were gonna have.
Nor me, yes.
You know, that one meeting where everyone, we had to end by 6:15, that was supposed to be our meeting and we didn't even get to it besides some couple questions that we were able to squeeze in. We spent most of the time with health insurance. And we never came back to it. So we never came back to the budget conversation. So, so I think we're kind of out of step too. And we are at a crunch time.
And now we're really out of step because of the mistake, and I agree.
The things that were mentioned last time that aren't on here was that 75,000 in surplus interest for this year is something that we can use as a use of funds for next year automatically. And I'm trying to, I'm thinking that we should try to whittle the 222 or down as much as we can. And I'm not sure if it's this list or a combination of not funding the debt service $40,000, the interest for 75. I don't know if we use our contingency fund this year, is that 25,000 or something?
I don't believe we've used any of that, and I believe you had asked, and I think I mentioned that I was projecting about somewhere between a $90,000 and $100,000 surplus just off reduced spending that was planned for this year that ended up not getting spent.
So those things are gonna get us close to the 222 without taking away any of these other projects, and that's the route that I would support going, is to try to whittle that 222
Down by that.
Either a use of funds for some of these things, but to me, it doesn't make sense to fund a debt service from just taking money from one fund, putting it into another fund. The same thing with the city hall.
Which debt service fund are you talking about?
Isn't there $40,000 in the projections for a debt service increase?
I believe there's a debt service increase, but that's due to payment increases.
Is that actual payments or just money setting aside?
Yes, yeah, so, those reflect actual payments. We have things like $861,000 of actual payments that we have going out.
So it's actually going to 861,725?
Correct.
Okay. Then scratch that. But the city hall, if that's actually going for the renovation fund, as I said before, my position would be not to put $100,000 off for that, if it's just going into a fund. So that's where I sit.
Okay.
We're still at the point of, the mayor and somebody else can go.
Yeah, are we gonna do that? I would, if we don't have, I would agree, no.
Is that the general?
Is that the
consensus?
general consensus?
Okay, so then I guess my other question, following this, do we want to have another budget meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks? Because it sounds like,
I thought we were,
it sounds like
actually.
the general council feels unsettled with where we're at. I know we left our last meeting, I asked if people felt like we needed another meeting going forward, and there was kind of crickets across the board. So, we can certainly try to squeeze in another meeting over the next 2 weeks if that's where the council wants to be.
I think it would be worthwhile to meet just in the event that we are going to be reverting to last year's levy, and we've got this $223 or $223,000 shortfall, to discuss how or if that is going to be funded.
Okay.
Budget workshop type of thing.
Because it would have to be for me, it would have to be later this week or the early part of next week, before the next meeting. And I don't know what the rest of the calendar is, or
How much time do you need to pull something together?
I mean, as much time as you can give me, but we also have no time, so.
Right, I understand.
Later this week,
I can do Thursday.
I could be good with that.
This room is booked up Thursday for a comp plan
oh, yeah, that's right,
from 5 to 7.
yeah.
I gotta be here for that too.
I mean, we can certainly meet downstairs in the conference room. It is an open meeting, so anyone could attend, but, we could certainly meet downstairs too.
How big is the comp plan committee? They could meet downstairs maybe too.
No, it's an open house for the party,
Oh,
Set up a bunch of boards, yeah.
so. No, it's not it would be a meeting, we probably could meet down there, but.
Are you talking about this Thursday?
That's what it sounds like.
I wouldn't be available unless it's later or earlier.
Like how late?
After 8.
Oh, that late. What about Monday the 11th? Or you're gone, aren't you?
No, I'm just taking Fridays off.
Oh, okay. I could
And
be
the
there.
12th, we have a park board meeting.
Park
so-
board is on the 12th, okay. Yeah,
Does Monday the 11th work for people?
does for me. I don't know about,
So, yep.
That works.
I can make it work, I guess.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so I know what I need to bring. We're basically looking at if we go down to 4.8, and I will talk to Scott Riggs in the morning to confirm. Go down to 4.8, how are we getting down there?
Yep.
yep.
Or how do we make up the shortfall?
I mean, yes, so whether it's, let's say budget adjustment, whether it's
Yeah.
revenue or expenditure, how are we getting down there?
Is everyone able to meet at 5
Yep.
on Monday?
Okay,
5 o'clock on Monday.
okay.
Ken, you got 6 o'clock on the, comp plan?
5 to 7.
5 to 7?
Does that work for you, Bruce?
It should.
Okay.
I have a conflict, but I think I can get out of it.
you'd think that
What day is it at again?
the 11th is fine.
Okay. All right, the 11th. Okay. With that, if there's nothing else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Oh, you're not gonna ask us?
I did.
Went by me?
No, you
No,
talked
you
about your,
you said you wanted to address Sean's question.
yeah,
But I thought you were gonna ask if we had questions.
well, that's what I was doing.
All inclusive thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why, do you have more?
I do.
Stop.
If I could, I just had a question for Matt because of the tree issue, and I noticed that you talked about the gravel thing. Is it a benefit to have more than one of those? I mean, if we had found money to, or something?
Yeah, we're actually gonna be doubling it, early next year. We're gonna have a gravel bed made for 50 trees.
Okay, so you already have plans for it and you've got a
Yes.
way to,
It's paid by the grant money to have a gravel bed size for 50. We were only able to do it 25 this year. So,
Okay.
yes, it is gonna get bigger.
okay. You don't want it bigger than that, do you? Or-
Oh, potentially, but as of right now, I think it'll
That's
serve
fine.
us, cause, I mean, again, we have to move all the trees out into the parks, and then on top of that, watering and all that, so there is a lot more maintenance than just putting a tree in the ground and walk away, so,
So it's not like a nursery thing where you put a bare root tree in and,
that's what this is.
it is a bare root?
Yeah, yep, that's
Oh,
what a
okay.
gravel bed is, it's just, it's about a 6-foot tree, bare root, that you just pack gravel around it. and
Okay.
They're supposed to grow a lot, and it's proven, the root base is twice the size, just
Okay.
in 4 months.
Because I certainly try to help raise money if you wanted to try to do that. But then, secondly, in some of the park board or somewhere, I saw writings about, I think, the park group being limited to the number of trees they can plant and how they can do it because there's only so many people and they have to water it, and you can only do so much. So it's a limiting condition is just, we just don't have a big staff that could do more. So then I'm wondering, is there a potential we could try to get volunteers to do any of that if we wanted to plant more trees than you would normally have planted? Is that something you? can
Yeah, I
see
guess we
that-
would have to kind of discuss that, cause I mean, they are driving our equipment that, some of them are CDL equipment
Yeah.
I mean, we put a big watering tank in the back of a truck. But yeah, I mean, we're always looking for people that wanna,
Well, I know at times
Volunteer.
we've had kind of a lukewarm reception sometimes if we wanted volunteers because of risks and things like that and safety, and it only fits for certain things. So I do know that we have to consider those things, but I just wondered in something like this, if there was a group of individuals that would be willing to do some of this type of work, it's something maybe we could organize, and if,
yeah, I mean, we accept volunteers year round from Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. We have some local businesses and churches that come, they clean parks, they do
Right.
stuff like that, clean ditches. So I don't know if I've ever turned down help since I've been public works director, but, usually we can find something that they can do. It's
okay,
just
well,
making
that's
sure
all I
it's
need.
safe.
If we're open to that kind of
Absolutely.
thinking, maybe we could think of how that would work, and if
I don't
there's,
say no to free help.
yeah, I don't know that we necessarily want people driving heavy equipment or.
They would,
but-
that's what I'm saying, we'll find
but-
stuff they can do, but yes.
But if you could park something there for
Yep.
Tuesdays and Thursdays and people come and use it.
Yeah,
you know, do
absolutely.
That type of thing. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
I do have one thing if Rick doesn't.
No,
No,
you-
go ahead.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
I had a past, city council member ask, on something on the police building. Does that have to go to a referendum, or can that go to a referendum to the city, or to the voters, the taxpayers?
I know when I talked to Scott Riggs about that initially, because we had that question, his direction was that, state statute basically says that those powers have been given to the city council, to operate those powers. And so, generally, something like a city hall or police station wouldn't go to a referendum vote. It would be their powers given to the city council, and the state, through the statutes, expects city councils to make those decisions as representatives of the city.
Representative government.
Does that mean that it can't be a question on the?
That's what it sounded like when I talked to him, but I mean, I'll be talking to him again tomorrow morning.
Okay.
To discuss.
Well, this is
our
a
levy
council
stuff,
member
so-
that was many years ago, so maybe
Yep.
the law's changed since then, but
Yeah.
he wanted to see if that could go to to the voters.
Certain of them do, like our library, the one that I worked on, we had to do a referendum.
At that time, we had to.
Had to.
Had to, okay,
But now I think the law's changed.
okay.
Yeah, and I can certainly check tomorrow, but that was that was the conversation I remember a little over a year ago when I asked him. That something like a city hall or a police station was expected to be chosen as through representative government. like
Because it came up
Rick
when
said.
we did build a fire station again. And then we were told that it didn't have to go to referendum. So,
The fitness center didn't have to go to the referendum.
No.
In the last city I was in, we just did it ourselves.
you know, but, you know.
Well, then I can answer his question.
Okay, anything, Maggie?
No, sir.
Again? Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, everybody.